today, joined by my producer, Alex. Alex is on the road, shooting from his beautiful car studio. Thanks for being here this morning, Alex. Today, we're going to lead with P Diddy. The Diddler.
Diddy.
That is the latest story, and that's also to allude to it, if that's the biggest story that's going on, we're just all kind of in a holding pattern as the election plays out, as more stuff in the Middle East. We'll touch on those things, but let's talk about the Diddler. Let's talk about P Diddy, Puffy, Sean Combs.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
Tyler, what's your take on this?
So much to talk about with him. We decided to leave it
Really?
with
Is
him.
there that much to talk about?
I mean, I guess, yeah, that's a good point. But there seems to be a new headline, right? Every 24 hours, if not more, within this story, right? Accused of anything from sex trafficking to prostitution to anything under that rainbow of illegal activities. Known for having, I don't know, for our audience, he was known for having the biggest and best parties. He wanted to make sure if you were someone of power, whether it was an athlete, a musician, a CEO, an executive, you were at his party and you were like, that was the best damn party I've ever been to. Now, there's two sides, because there's some people you hear that, like, I never saw what they're accusing him. And then there's ones probably that are being quiet.
Well, and then there's people like Cat Williams who said, I wasn't going there. Like, I saw it, I felt it, I noticed it. And so kind of, and then you have people kind of saying, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Here's a thought that's going through my mind right now. If we would not have experienced the Jeffrey Epstein situation, would we be more surprised about what has been discovered about Diddy? My point on that is no. It's almost like, we've gotten to this point that people with all of this power and all of this money and all of this show, they're ugly. And, it's kind of like, don't be surprised when you pull up the rock and you see, squigglies, crawlies underneath there. That's what you're going to get. And so there's a part of me that, and I mentioned this to you, is I think what's going to be interesting, much like within the Epstein case, after years, like, here's the attendee list, is what's really going to come through the trial and discovery when it occurs in a year, 18 months time, and what people get caught in the web and what happens over this 12 to 18 month period potentially that starts more stories come out. Like, as I understood, all of this came because his ex Cassie, filed charges. And this is the amazing thing is I read this morning and picked up is every charge that she had against him has been corroborated in this new federal file, pretty much the same things, the video and everything. He settled it in one day.
Wow.
He settled that case with her in one day. Which then you lead to, all right, is that power? Is that I got something over on you? Is it however may be? It's really interesting. But again, I look at it here on September 30th, 2024. We have the vice president debate going on tomorrow. We have, Middle East, where we have the Israelis that are just taking no prisoners. Where if they're venture forward, we have business going on. It's kind of almost this kind of grasping to find a story.
Yeah, well, I just want to going back. What do you think is, with Epstein? You mentioned Epstein earlier. What's going to make this case different than what could have or should have or never did happen with the Epstein case? Because we all know what happened to Epstein. He ended up getting killed or killing himself in prison. What would come of this? And there were names on that document, a lot of big political names, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot on this list. What is going to be the difference maker, or the thing that the straw that breaks the camel's back, if you will?
I think the piece that could be is if they find video technological evidence. I mean, that's what they didn't have with Epstein. And I think that is, if they go to an extent of subpoenaing guest phones and their documents and whatever may be. And, one of the things is that, Diddy recorded it all. And, that's the extent of, does it go to the point where they have enough digital evidence? And then, maybe there's people involved there that's like, yeah, I didn't consent to this. Okay, but here's the end of the day. Epstein is dead.
Right.
What if, let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, yes, everyone is innocent till proven guilty, but just say, for example, that he's guilty, he gets convicted, life in prison. All right, let's just say that turns out. Not saying that's the case. Everyone's innocent till proven guilty. Does anything come of it? No. I really don't think anything comes of it. I don't think there's other people that get caught in it. I think it's maybe so. Do we have LeBron? Do we have somebody else that gets taken down? I don't know. But I think that's where there's a desensitization to it, not for the victims, not at all for the victims. And, that's the part that you hope, much like in Epstein's case, is that those people are face some type of, get some retribution. But as far as other guilty parties, man, I don't think so. And I just, okay, whatever. We'll see what happens. But again, I believe we're sitting here today on September 30th, after he's been in prison for a couple of weeks and, in holding without bail. I really don't think much comes of it like Epstein.
Well, the other thing, too, is like the documentaries. You already know there's a Netflix documentary in the works. There's probably a Hulu one and an Amazon one.
Well, there's a TMZ. I just saw that got released over the weekend. Yeah,
it's a media frenzy. It's a media frenzy, this story.
Well, because I think they have nothing else to talk about.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing else, and it's so many different individuals. You were in that world at Huffington Post, and you just kind of like, if you're looking today and you're saying the Taylor Swift stories, it's dead and dying. You have, what other, major entertainment stories are there? It's really, that's it, because of all the different athletes and major people, but yet there's kind of like, is there much to go off right now?
Well, it feels like, there was a hurricane recently here in Florida where I'm at. Yeah. It feels like the calm before the storm.
Yeah, but in that, is that because in the political season we're in?
I think so. If shifting subject matters into, politics, U.S. politics now, if the Democratic Party, right, from all, I guess, aspects, a lot of people, including the polls, point to a Trump victory, wouldn't you want it to be as calm and as positive as possible before, about 30 something days away now, before that election? Gas prices seem a little bit lower. I don't know, food costs.
Are you saying that the Democratic Party controls major media? Is that what you're saying, Alex?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying, wouldn't you, if you had that type of power?
It's kind of like this is, there's a general consensus, fuel prices going down. Oh, well, that's peculiar. Like what macroeconomic things have changed? Oh, nothing. Oh, actually, the macroeconomics point that fuel prices should be seasonal time of year. Yes, you have that less driving, but yet there's not any major macroeconomics that say we should see this downtick in prices, maybe a little bit less driving. Okay, but not statistically major. And we have all of the unrest in the Middle East. Normally, this is when oil prices are skyrocketing up. Like if there's a bomb that goes off in the Middle East, that is a recipe for barrel prices to jump.
Absolutely.
Huh. And crude levels are kind of flat. And it's almost like a little bit was built in, or, maybe it's not being said. Maybe there's a little bit of strategic reserve being leaked, just to make sure volume on the, international trade is, stranger things have happened. It just seems odd. And one of the things that I did pick up this morning is, but here's the other part. And I saw this, and having spent time in Israel, having been there, having friends, just interviewed a friend, which we'll release here in a couple weeks ago, Winch, about what's going on in Israel. I think a lot of the I would say, I would describe this as religious, not extremists, but the conservatives. That's Jewish, that's Christian, that's Islamic, the ones that are just like love people, right? And that happens in all three faiths that are in those areas. I think just my guess on it, and having been there, and especially knowing how under pressure Lebanon has been, and now all of a sudden you have someone that comes in, it's like, we're going to stand up to the bullies.
Right.
I think I mean, there's a part of me that just wonders, is this all of a sudden the play where there starts to be a little bit of, it's going to be unrest, and does this point to quote unquote World War III? Who knows? But it just feels like someone is acting and finally standing up for all the oppression that has happened from the radicals in that part of the world. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, and then you have the war in Ukraine, obviously, where Putin's putting on the pressure, and that war continues. And I don't know if you read,
it's been unending.
Yes, supposedly Trump has met with Zelensky, has met or is going to meet with him. Is that an indicator that they believe he's going to be the next president to help end that war? We need strong leadership to do something, to step in to help figure out how do we end these battles that, if you know the history books, that these battles have been this isn't new. Ukraine and Russia have been fighting for hundreds of years, thousands, right? You can go back in
the Middle East, thousands of years. I mean, if you look at that part of the Eastern Bloc, Europe, I mean, it's been
hundreds. That's the breadbasket of Europe, right? I mean, Ukraine provides all the wheat. I mean, it's the battleground, right? And so
here's an interesting take on all that is, where do you think whoever gets elected president of the United States, Trump or Harris, whoever it is, how do you think they enter into those skirmishes with either a bucket of water or a bucket of gasoline? Which do you think?
Me personally, I think Kamala, if she were to win, would probably be more of a bucket of water and ultimately not get involved, not threaten to get involved. I don't see her as a big and tough negotiator, but more of like, how do we end this and de-escalate this peacefully? On the other hand, Trump, I feel like, would be a little more like gasoline. He has been a negotiator his whole life, right? Building his Trump empire, so he knows how to wheel and deal. And I think that's something that we do need now, is someone who can wheel and deal with these types of people and have done so in the past.
So if you say it in that way, that Trump would bring potentially gasoline and Harris water, if you look at it from the outside and you're outside of the U.S., who do you believe makes the U.S. more of a knight on the global stage or a pawn on the global stage?
Oh man, that's a good question. I mean, it's just I guess, and I am not like, I don't have a side. It's a tough. This is a really
I'm just
tough
asking.
ballot. I think that it's more of a pawn with Kamala and more of a knight, or at least stronger with a Trump victory. It's not, I mean, and everyone, you'd fight, everyone, yell. And I just think that in these rooms, like, you have to understand what types of people you're dealing with here,
that's when I think of, whether it's Iran and whoever else is backing them. You have Russia and, wherever else that spider web goes. Those are the two majors. And then obviously you dip into the whole Chinese, Taiwan, all of it. And I just wonder, again, we know what Trump is. We know what happened last time is, when everyone's like, oh, he was their buddy. It's like, well, they pretty much got quiet and, hey, move to the back of the bus. Whereas I wonder, I just don't know. And what we've seen with Biden is Putin has gone full tilt during the Biden, administration's like, he has no fears of doing whatever. And, I kind of seemingly there's a wonder is Israel looking at it? I don't know, just speculation. Is Israel looking at this as like, we better act on our own because, so often there are times where I think Israel has allowed the U.S. to act in their favor. Right. And now they're like, screw it. We got to act on our own, which I don't think is a bad thing. But I just wonder, when we go into it, and I have no idea, but what are the world allies or the world U.S. adversaries? It's interesting when, you have reports now that Iran is trying to manipulate the U.S. election in Harris's favor.
You heard about the recent, maybe it was a week or 2 weeks ago, there was another Trump at his golf course in Florida, like a gunman, right? And wasn't the news out of that he was like paid, like he got paid? There was leaks of something like that, like
mercenary for something,
mercenary or something. I don't know, man. Like it's so.
It's again, here's where we
get involved with that.
There's a lot of. We have a U.S. and world unrest, and I think part of it is we're a little bit in this waiting game of where are we going to end up?
Right.
Where are we going to end up? How is this going to play forward? And I think that from when you look at some of the employment factors, when you look at some of those other things, you just wonder, do we have to sit and wait, or do we need to continue to act in ways that make sense, act in ways to, make sure that we do the things that keep us moving forward and not take too big of jumps?
The thing that I want, I think what will happen and what Trump has done the last time he was president was, all right, let's figure out all the international stuff that's going on. How do we calm it down and not escalate it? And then focus back on the U.S. because, as we've talked about the last couple of weeks, major crisis with Boeing, major crisis with Amazon. Tech companies seem to be firing everybody. Gas prices and food prices in this country are astronomical. Like, can we put a focus, and do you think there can be a focus back on Americans and getting people, back to, I think where we all want to be, which is to abundance and peace, ultimately. I don't think we all want to just be fighting and arguing all the time.
Here's something that's interesting, and I picked this up this morning that, I saw this from a friend. And I've seen it myself, and I imagine the news is pretty hot there because you live in Florida. The recent hurricane that, I think it's probably pushing 100 identified people perished, the number of communities just destroyed. Typically, those situations bind the country together. If you think of Katrina, if you think of all the different major hurricanes that really bind the country together for support and outpouring, it's almost like news agencies don't want to talk about it. I haven't seen the immense amount. What I've seen is by friends sharing on social media. That's it. I don't see it on the news agencies talking about the devastation.
And why do you think that is? Like, what is the purpose of not showing that this was it hit as a category 4, which I believe there's 5, and it was on a pretty big hurricane. Luckily, where I live, it did not affect us. But I know it was devastating in certain areas. I don't know why cover that, and then you see all over the news about P Diddy and every single thing that he did and all this horrible stuff that's going on there.
Yeah.
While 100 people dead. I don't know. It's interesting if the tabloids are controlled by the left. What narrative are they trying to tell?
It is very odd, and I think that's something that as we go through the next couple of weeks, how's that going to play out? there was a college football news over the weekend. Two candidates. Trump went to the Alabama-Georgia game, and Tim Walz went to the Minnesota-Michigan game. And I think both of them were received in totally different ways.
How were they? I don't know this. What happened?
Yeah. So, Trump was, I think, just kind of meh. I think there wasn't, you think about it, Alabama's a pretty conservative Republican state. And I don't think there was an outpouring of one way or the other. He was there, made his waves, left at halftime, whatever. Tim Walz was cursed out of the stadium. Said, we don't want you here. Leave. Get away from here. You don't belong here. Those are the reports coming out. And it was like, oh, okay. This is a battleground state that campaign, the Harris Walz campaign, is fighting valiantly for in Michigan.
Well, then how do you win those if the emotional level is
I don't like Michigan fans. Those are Walmart Wolverines.
Well, like, how do you flip that script? Like, what do you do for those people in those states that are just so
I
emotionally
think that's
charged?
what is going to be interesting tomorrow. So as we're recording this, September 30th, tomorrow, October 1st, is going to be the vice presidential debate, which normally has been like, you might as watch, Ren and Stimpy. Go watch that because that is more educational than the vice presidential debate. I think it's going to be like what we read on Wednesday is going to really determine, how do people respond to it? Not how either character shows up, but is it, man, we really like that guy, or, seriously. And I think it's going to be that kind of for either one of the candidates. And, as we talk about it, there's not a lot of news, but there's not a lot of, campaign news either. And when you pick up from whether it's YouTube or whatever else, the people that are picking on Trump, picking on Vance, we just talked about picking on Walz, and then picking on Harris. It's pretty unilateral, is that they're getting picked apart for their disingenuousness, their kind of middle school combativeness, their untouch of reality. Walz, as part of the comments is, he's kind of being jeered out of the stadium, and he's kind of like, okay. He's like, just like, no, they don't like you, dude.
They don't like
just
you,
like, yeah. And it's just like, you don't get it. And it's a really, again,
it's like, what do you do at that point while you're being cursed and booed off stage? You just kind of got to get out of there and just take your shots.
You must think I'm a Minnesota fan.
Right. Yeah. It's like, are they that naive I guess.
But again, that's where it's kind of like, well, that was a swing and a miss, because that headline just gives fervor to anyone that wants to be against, Harris and Walz. And I'm neither here nor there at this point, right, in this discussion. And then, at the same point, reading about Trump, there was neither here nor there. They interviewed some players and like, did you care that he was at the game? It's like, I'm here to play the game. He's a president. Yeah,
football.
Okay, great, whatever. And some players like, I'm just, I'm 18, but I'm not into it. Like, whatever, let them do their thing. And so that was the context in one compared to the other. And that isn't the news we've been reading the last few weeks. It's been everyone loves Tim.
It was in such a interesting, I'm like thinking about how to explain it. My kid's 3, he'll be older. And, what was that time like, Dad? Oh, well, let me tell you something. And I look down the road, right, to the ballots of like, who could it be in 4 years from now? And the leadership in this country and you mentioned this, like playground-like middle school behavior from grown people that you think would just have a better understanding and, tell people you treat people with kindness and respect everybody, no matter what their preference of this. And then they just go after each other. It's like, when does all that end?
Let's time out. Let's time out right there.
Okay. Time out. What?
If we look at the news where does overwhelmingly society, I would say 40 and younger, where do they get their news?
So that's all right. My demographic, I would say majority of it comes from any sort of digital online content, meaning YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any of those platforms.
Social media.
I would say social media, yeah, or
yep. And so
video alternative
what
platform.
drives social media virality?
I mean, anything that's controversial.
And so now we have political leaders, whether they've understood it or not, or they're keep being pushed of, it's kind of like, you keep feeding a bully, say, yeah, that's it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. What's the bully going to do? He's going to keep bullying.
Right.
Him or her. It doesn't matter. They're both one and the same. Kamala says just as bullying things and patronizing and ugly things about Trump as Trump does about her. It's unilateral. They are both one and the same. And, that's where it's kind of like, well, as we look at other political, like there was this guy, GOP candidate from, I don't remember what state. He goes out and hires his friend and her kids to take a picture with them. So it appears like he has a family photo. It's just like, dude, come on. Well, like, what are you trying to do? And I think this like, elementary style, almost very immature style is people are playing into social media. And as we've seen it, is that when you get down in the mud and you play with the pigs, you're going to end up with stink all over you. And that's what's going on. And
and that's my point. It's like
back to P Diddy.
Yeah, back to P Diddy, right? And then we're back, circle right back to P Diddy playing with the pigs. Like it's true though. I mean,
hey, just lather them up in baby oil and let's go.
Lather everybody up in baby oil.
Have you ever seen people do that, like pig wrestling? Have you ever seen that?
I personally, my latest recall of any like KY jelly wrestling is old school.
Oh, no.
Like
no, sometimes you go to fairs and they'll have it, and they'll have like little pigs, like 20, 30 pounds. They're called roasters. I don't know what that's what they're called. Anyways, and they lather them up in like baby oil or Vaseline or whatever. And then you got to go out and you like have this contest who can grab the pig and you win. And if you've ever tried to grab pigs, little pigs like that size, they're extremely quick. And they are not, even when they're not slippery, all greased up, it is hard. I showed pigs in 4-H when I was younger, and man, it took a couple people to try to corner one and grab one, unless you had like the right equipment. But anyways,
I bet. What's going on in your world? Out in Washington, out on the farm. How are the cows? How's everybody?
Cows are doing good. We it's starting to cool off. It's we had a little bit of ice formation in the water hose this morning, so I had to navigate through that. It's it's that time of year. Leaves are starting to turn colors. It's not jealous. Green by any means, but
it's 91 degrees here.
I think the high is going to be 64 today. It's currently 45. I got a long sleeve shirt on. It's a little chilly, but the end of the week. Man, it is going to be 75. We have homecoming on Friday night. Home game.
You guys won a big game on Friday?
Won a good game on Friday. It was much like the Alabama-Georgia game. There were 2 touchdowns scored in the final 2 minutes. Wow. So it was good. Braxton, my son, played really well, had some good receptions, had some big kicks. So it is that time of year, and my Buckeyes are rolling. They haven't played anybody, but they're rolling.
Well, I was about to say, the Buckeyes haven't even played anybody yet. Their strength of schedule is a little weak, but they're a good team.
Hey, as a buddy of mine, my brother-in-law was like, hey, the guy who's scheduled Ohio State needs to get a bonus. I'm like, here's the problem, is they were supposed to have UW on their schedule, but because they joined the Big Ten, they didn't have them. And that's when, of course, they had DeBoer. They had all those things. Those schedules are put into play 3, 4, 5, 6 years in advance.
They are.
You just don't know how good teams will be. And there's also, because of all the conference realignment, they had to scramble. They were supposed to have, some of the California teams that are now in the Big Ten on their schedule, but they had to reschedule it because they came into the the conference, and that happened to all of them. So you can't blame them for a weak schedule. It's just
all right. Fair enough. That's true.
It is what it is. I mean, Baylor, what happened to them?
Baylor sucks.
I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry. My Jets suck too. So
yeah. How about those Browns? Those suck just as bad too.
Yeah,
a buddy of mine who's a big Minnesota Vikings fan. We were talking about it, and Minnesota held on, but I was like, the Browns suck just enough. Like they go out, their first drive, they scored the last 2 games. They have a final drive to potentially win, and on 4th and whatever, Deshaun Watson gets sacked, and you're just like, yep, that's so Browns.
Yep, sounds like the Jets.
And then you watch the Ravens destroy, and the heart of the Cleveland Browns of the 80s, Ozzie Newsome, is just the man, and you're just like, he could have been here.
He could have been there, yeah.
30 years.
I know the story well. I know it.
Probably not as painfully well as I do.
Well,
to have your team ripped away from you, to go to another city and become Super Bowl champions, and your team has yet to ever be a Super Bowl champion, much less get there.
Fair enough. Well, Tyler, I appreciate. I mean, listen, it's kind of in that news cycle of nothing.
Let's just enjoy the world we're in.
Yeah,
and
enjoy the world.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do?
And
until there's a breaking story that we're all going, holy moly, because it's gonna happen. Yeah. Something's gonna happen.
Oh, it'll happen. We'll come in with hot breaking news. But thanks for being here, Alex. Thanks for whoever watches in. Make sure to hit on subscribe on the YouTube, as well the bell, so that way you get notified. We release new podcasts with a guest every Wednesday. Make sure you capture that. Check out that episode, as well as each of these Monday Newswires. Till next time, choose to lead with impact.